Laura Thompson had always been the quiet force behind the scenes. At 48 years old, she was the seasoned data operations specialist at a mid-sized tech company in Denver, Colorado. For over a decade, Laura had weathered every storm the company faced, from mergers that reshaped the entire business, to hiring freezes that left teams shorthanded, to relentless budget cuts that tested everyone's limits. Through it all, she was the steady hand, the dependable backbone no one noticed until she was gone. She wasn't the type to chase titles or spotlight. Laura's satisfaction came from knowing her work mattered, from the late nights fixing broken systems and mentoring younger analysts, to quietly keeping things running smoothly while the chaos swirled around her. 10 years of loyalty, of showing up even when the pay barely kept pace with inflation, of putting the team first. She had believed in the company, believed that if she stayed long enough and worked hard enough, someone would recognize her true value. But reality had a way of shattering illusions. The past year had been particularly hard. Her teenage daughter had just been accepted to a top university, a proud moment shadowed by the staggering tuition bill staring back at her from the kitchen table. On top of that, Laura's mother's medical expenses were climbing faster than ever, and the rising costs of everyday life, gas, groceries, utilities, had tightened the noose around the family budget. Laura knew what she needed wasn't a luxury. It was survival, a fair raise, a 20% increase that matched not just her workload, but her experience, her dedication, and the sacrifices she'd made. So, she prepared meticulously for the meeting, compiling 5 years' worth of achievements, streamlining her argument with clarity and calm professionalism. But when she sat down across from her manager, Mark, his smirk was the first blow. It wasn't just a smile, it was a silent dismissal, a half-second curl of the lip that spoke volumes. To Mark, Laura was just a fixture, a fixed cost on the payroll, not someone who deserved to grow. When she asked for the raise, he chuckled and said, "Laura, you know we don't do raises like that here. HR caps internal increases at 10%. And even that's rare." His tone was patronizing, his words a cold reminder that loyalty was a commodity, not a value. That night, Laura sat alone in her kitchen, the college bill beside her, the prescription receipts stacked high, the weight of invisible years pressed down on her. She thought about the weekends she'd sacrificed, the family dinners missed, the times she'd swallowed her frustration and said yes to yet another last-minute project. She remembered the message from a recruiter 3 weeks ago, still unopened in her inbox. A quiet voice inside told her, maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Laura woke up the morning after her difficult meeting with a restless mind. The echo of her manager's smirk and dismissive words haunted her thoughts. She had given a decade of her life, but in those few moments, all she felt was belittled and unseen. The hard truth was settling in. Loyalty in her workplace wasn't valued as she had hoped. It was a discount on her worth. She went through her usual morning routine mechanically, brewed coffee, kissed her daughter goodbye as she left for school, and dressed in her professional but worn blazer. Laura knew she had to keep up appearances at the office, to not let anyone see the cracks beginning to form beneath her calm exterior. The corporate world, especially for women her age, was unforgiving when it came to showing vulnerability. But that morning, the unopened LinkedIn message from a recruiter lingered at the back of her mind. She had ignored it before, wary of what leaving might mean. Yet now, as she stared at the screen, her finger hovered over the reply button. The recruiter's message was simple but loaded with possibility. "Hi Laura. We're building a new data strategy team at a growing firm and your background caught our attention. Would you be open to a conversation?" For the first time in years, Laura allowed herself a flicker of hope. With a tentative tap, she typed back, "Yes, I'd be interested in learning more." She hit send and leaned back, feeling an unfamiliar surge of adrenaline. The day dragged at work, but Laura pushed through, answering emails, joining meetings, and maintaining the veneer of composure. Yet inside, a quiet fire had sparked. She was no longer just enduring, she was awakening. 2 days later, the recruiter's call came. The woman on the line was direct but warm, quickly putting Laura at ease. They talked about her skills, her aspirations, and the kind of role she wanted, one where she would be truly valued, where her experience wasn't just a footnote but a key asset. "I want to be part of something that respects loyalty and doesn't mistake quiet dedication for weakness," Laura confessed. There was a long pause. Then the recruiter said, "Laura, I think you're exactly what we need." This conversation felt like a lifeline. Over the next week, Laura kept her job performance impeccable. Not out of obligation, but out of pride. She had resolved to leave on her own terms, with dignity and grace. Not bitterness. Meanwhile, her manager's attitude did not soften. He continued to dismiss her contributions during meetings, crediting others for work she had led. She heard her name mentioned in passing or avoided altogether. It was clear the company had already written her off. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, a senior client Laura had nurtured for years reached out. "Laura, is there any way I can speak with you directly? We're not comfortable moving forward without you on board." This was the client she had personally onboarded, the one who had trusted her through complex regulatory hurdles and tight deadlines. Word spread quickly among other clients. Several of them requested to meet her, wanting assurances that their projects would continue seamlessly. The news traveled back to her old company like wildfire, causing ripples of anxiety in the executive suite. Upper management summoned her manager for a closed-door meeting, pressing for answers on how he had allowed this critical employee to feel so undervalued that she was looking elsewhere. Laura's decision to explore new opportunities was no longer just a personal choice. It had become a catalyst threatening the company's stability. Then came the official interview with the new company. Laura walked into the sleek downtown office with a mixture of nerves and excitement. The panel was sharp, curious, but most importantly, respectful. They wanted to hear how she had handled difficult projects, how she led teams, and how she envisioned building a sustainable data strategy. Within days, an offer arrived, a 26% salary increase, leadership responsibilities, and a clear path to grow. But more than the numbers, it was the recognition that struck Laura. This company saw her as a leader, not just a resource to be managed. Laura sent a professional message to her manager, giving him a chance to meet the raise request. His reply was cold and final: "We have policies in place. You know the cap. Best of luck." That moment crystallized everything. She was done waiting. 2 weeks later, Laura handed in her resignation. The reaction was as muted as her years of quiet dedication. No fanfare. No attempts to convince her to stay. Just an awkward silence and a flicker of panic behind her manager's eyes. As she packed up her desk, she felt lighter than she had in years. The clients she had cultivated were already contacting her new employer, confirming that Laura's departure was a loss far bigger than her company had admitted. Her new role opened doors she had only dreamed of. She led client onboarding teams, shaped strategic discussions, and began mentoring junior analysts with the same patience and passion she had always carried. The respect and trust she received reinvigorated her. Word of her departure and the consequences rippled through her old company. Investigations into HR policies revealed that her manager had been using arbitrary salary caps to maintain control, blocking fair raises and promotions for years. Several colleagues reached out privately, thanking Laura for inspiring them to speak up. Through all this, Laura never sought revenge or drama. Instead, she built a new legacy, one grounded in respect, fairness, and the quiet power of knowing your worth. After accepting the new job offer, Laura thought the hardest part was behind her. She had made the decision, drawn her line, and stepped into a future where her skills and dedication would finally be recognized. Yet, the true upheaval was only just beginning, both for her and the company she left behind. The first unexpected shock came quietly but unmistakably. Just days after Laura's resignation became official, one of the company's largest clients reached out directly to her new employer. This wasn't a casual inquiry but a firm, determined request. They wanted Laura to continue managing their account. The client made it clear they weren't satisfied with anyone else. Her expertise, her steady hand, and the trust she had built over years were irreplaceable. This sent shockwaves through Laura's former employer. Internally, panic bubbled just beneath the surface. Managers scrambled to address the situation, but it was too late. Other major clients followed suit, sending similar messages, all asking to work with Laura or expressing unease over her departure. What had once seemed like routine business suddenly turned into a critical problem. Laura felt a mixture of surprise and validation. She'd always known she made a difference, but seeing the real impact of her work on these key accounts was powerful. It also exposed a harsh truth about corporate loyalty. It wasn't the company these clients valued, but the people they trusted. And now, those people were leaving. Meanwhile, back at her old office, tensions ran high. Her former manager, Mark, who had dismissed her raise request with a sneer, was suddenly under scrutiny. Whispers spread among colleagues, rumors of internal investigations, questions about salary policies, and concerns about how long valuable employees had been ignored or undervalued. It turned out that the 10% cap on raises Mark had cited wasn't an official policy at all. It was a convenient excuse to keep control and limit employees' growth. The company's HR department had no records to support the cap, and several other staff members began quietly speaking out about denied promotions and blocked raises. Laura was stunned by how quickly things unraveled. One by one, her former colleagues reached out with messages of thanks and solidarity. Many admitted they had stayed too long, afraid to rock the boat or look elsewhere for fear of losing stability. Laura's courage to leave had given them hope, proof that change was possible. Despite the turmoil at her old workplace, Laura remained focused on her new role. Her first few weeks were a whirlwind of onboarding, strategy meetings, and team building. For the first time in years, she felt seen and heard. Her ideas were met with genuine interest, not skepticism. Her voice mattered. Then, an unexpected opportunity arose. Her new director called her into his office and told her some of Laura's former clients had contacted them directly, requesting to continue working with her. The company was eager to onboard these clients, but they wanted Laura to lead the transition. The responsibility was enormous, but Laura felt ready. Accepting the challenge, Laura worked tirelessly to ensure smooth integrations. The clients responded positively, reassured by her involvement and expertise. It was a far cry from the environment she had left behind, where her efforts had been overlooked and undervalued. As she settled into this new chapter, Laura found herself reflecting on the strange and quiet power of walking away. She hadn't left out of anger or revenge. She left because she deserved respect, fair compensation, and the opportunity to grow. That decision had not only transformed her own career but had sent ripples through an entire company. Back at her old firm, the consequences of Laura's departure continued to unfold. Management faced tough questions about employee retention and compensation practices. Mark, who had laughed off Laura's raise request, found himself sidelined, reassigned to an internal project team with no client contact. It was a demotion that spoke louder than any formal reprimand. Laura heard this news secondhand from former colleagues, some with surprise, others with quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about personal victory, but about accountability. The system that had held her back was finally cracking. Despite the challenges, Laura chose not to dwell on bitterness. Instead, she focused on mentoring her new team, sharing her experiences and encouraging others to recognize their worth. She wanted no one on her team to wait 10 years for recognition as she had. Her story began to spread quietly beyond her immediate circle. A LinkedIn post she made about the power of silent observation and decisive action resonated with many. Messages poured in, from people who had stayed too long in unsupportive roles, from those mustering courage to seek better opportunities, and from former clients eager to collaborate again. This unexpected wave of support and connection reminded Laura of a vital truth. Sometimes, change begins with a single act of courage. Her decision to step away was more than a career move. It was a beacon for others trapped in invisible roles, waiting for their moment to be seen. And as she stood at the helm of her new team, leading with confidence and compassion, Laura knew her journey was far from over. She was no longer invisible. She was a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of what happens when you refuse to settle, when you demand to be valued not just for what you do, but for who you are. After weeks of navigating her new role and witnessing the fallout at her former company, Laura found herself reflecting deeply on the journey that had brought her here. The experience had forced her to rethink everything she thought she knew about loyalty, value, and what it truly meant to be respected in a professional setting. At her old office, Laura had been the quiet hero, the one who stayed late, fixed problems no one else noticed, and mentored junior staff without ever demanding recognition. She'd believed that dedication and patience would eventually pay off. That loyalty was a currency that would buy her respect. But now she saw it differently. Loyalty, she realized, was only as valuable as the respect it commanded. When it's taken for granted, it becomes a burden, a silent toll that slowly erodes your sense of self-worth. Laura's manager had smirked when she asked for a raise, not just because of the money, but because he saw her loyalty as a given, something to be exploited, not rewarded. This shift in perspective was painful but necessary. Laura understood that for years, she had been complicit in her own invisibility. She had tolerated dismissive attitudes, downplayed her own achievements, and swallowed frustration to keep the peace. She thought it was about sacrifice, but really, it was about survival. In her new company, everything was different. The respect and trust she now received were not handed out as favors but earned through genuine appreciation of her skills and character. For the first time, Laura's silence was not mistaken for weakness. Her ideas were heard, her leadership welcomed. This clarity gave her a new sense of power, a quiet but firm confidence that she carried into every meeting, every decision. She no longer felt the need to over-explain or justify her worth. Her track record spoke for itself. And now, others saw it too. Laura also noticed how this change transformed her relationships, not just with colleagues, but with herself. She woke up with less anxiety, less self-doubt. The weight of invisible labor lifted, replaced by a sense of belonging and purpose. Work became a place of growth, not just endurance. One of the most profound moments came when she was invited to speak at a leadership roundtable at her new company. Standing before senior executives, Laura shared her story, not as a victim, but as a woman who had learned to claim her worth and walk away from environments that didn't see her value. Her words resonated deeply. One executive confessed afterward, "I wish we had someone like you 5 years ago. We lost too many Laurens." That admission underscored a systemic failure, one that Laura's departure had begun to expose. At home, Laura's daughter noticed the change too. "Mom, you seem happier," she said one evening. Laura smiled, realizing this journey wasn't just about career, it was about healing wounds that stretched far beyond the office walls. Laura's evolving perspective also brought new clarity about leadership. True leaders don't just manage tasks, they nurture people, recognize contributions, and create spaces where everyone can thrive. She was determined to be that leader for her new team, ensuring no one would feel invisible or undervalued under her watch. This shift also gave Laura patience, not the kind that tolerates mistreatment, but the wisdom to discern where to invest her energy and when to walk away. She understood that boundaries weren't barriers, but necessary protections for one's dignity. The contrast between her old and new environments highlighted systemic issues within many organizations, where policies, whether formal or informal, often limit employee growth and silence voices. Laura's story became a lens through which colleagues began questioning these norms and advocating for change. Yet, despite all the challenges and the upheaval, Laura felt gratitude for the journey that forced her to grow, for the new opportunities that awaited, and for the strength she discovered within herself. She realized that sometimes, the hardest changes bring the greatest clarity. Laura's change in perspective was not just about leaving a toxic workplace, it was about reclaiming her narrative, rewriting what it means to be loyal, respected, and valued. It was about finding a place where her skills and spirit could flourish, and inspiring others to do the same. The offer from her new company wasn't just a job, it was a fresh start. When Laura walked through the glass doors of the modern office in downtown Denver on her first day, she felt a mix of excitement and cautious optimism. This was a place where her skills mattered, where her voice would be heard, and where she wasn't just a name on a payroll but a valued leader. Laura was welcomed warmly by her new team, a group of talented, diverse individuals eager to learn and collaborate. The culture here was different, open, transparent, and encouraging. Meetings were conversations, not monologues. Ideas were debated respectfully, and contributions recognized genuinely. Laura quickly realized this was the environment she had been craving for years. Within her first week, Laura was invited to lead a critical project to integrate several key client data systems into the company's workflow. The clients were ones she had built relationships with during her previous role, and the company recognized the importance of her involvement in maintaining those connections. It was a heavy responsibility, but Laura felt ready. She crafted detailed transition plans, organized training sessions, and worked closely with the clients to ensure their needs were met. The trust she had earned over the years shone through, and the clients expressed their relief and excitement about continuing to work with her. At the same time, Laura's leadership style began to emerge. She encouraged open communication, listened actively to her team members' concerns, and celebrated small victories. She made it clear that no one on her team would have to wait years to be seen or heard as she had. One afternoon, a junior analyst named Mia nervously presented a new data model proposal. When the room fell silent afterward, Laura noticed Mia's trembling hands and anxious eyes. She quietly said, "You did great. Your clarity and insight really stood out." That simple encouragement transformed Mia's confidence, and Laura saw a reflection of her younger self, waiting for someone to acknowledge her worth. Laura's influence quickly spread beyond her immediate team. Her new director invited her to join strategic planning meetings and even suggested she present at the upcoming leadership roundtable. Laura accepted with a mix of pride and humility. She understood this was more than recognition, it was a platform to advocate for change. As weeks passed, Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. She woke up each morning eager to face challenges, knowing she had the support and respect of her colleagues. Her financial worries began to ease with her new salary. But more importantly, she felt valued in ways money couldn't measure. At home, Laura's daughter noticed the change too. "Mom, you seem happier and less stressed," she said one evening. Laura smiled, grateful that her professional transformation was rippling into her personal life. Laura also found herself reflecting on the impact of her departure from her old company. The ripple effects were unmistakable. Client renewals were delayed. Internal investigations were underway, and whispers of policy reviews circulated. Laura realized her leaving had sparked a much-needed conversation about fairness, recognition, and employee treatment. Despite the disruption, Laura held no bitterness. Instead, she embraced the opportunity to build a new legacy, one where respect and fairness were non-negotiable. She mentored her team, encouraged open dialogue, and championed transparency. One evening, Laura received a message from a former client who had recently joined a new firm. "Are you taking on new partnerships? I'd love to collaborate again." It was a reminder that relationships built on trust transcended companies. Laura's journey was a testament to the power of recognizing one's worth and courageously stepping into opportunities that align with personal values and professional aspirations. Since stepping into her new role, Laura found herself evolving in ways she hadn't anticipated. The old version of herself, quiet, patient, often overshadowed, was slowly being replaced by a confident leader who understood her worth and embraced her voice. Early on, Laura recognized that growth wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder or earning a bigger paycheck. It was about becoming someone who could inspire change, support others, and create an environment where every person felt valued. Leading her new team was both a challenge and a joy. Laura committed herself to building a culture rooted in trust and openness. She encouraged her team members to speak up, to share their ideas, even if they were unpolished. She celebrated small wins and made it clear that mistakes were part of growth, not a cause for blame. Laura also became a mentor, especially to younger women who reminded her of herself years ago, eager but uncertain, talented but hesitant to claim their place. She shared her story honestly, describing the years she had stayed silent and the moment she decided to step into her own power. One day, she noticed a junior analyst, Mia, struggling after a presentation didn't go as well as hoped. Laura took her aside, offering reassurance and practical advice. "You did great," she said. "Don't let the silence fool you. Your ideas were sharp, and your clarity stood out. Keep pushing." Those moments of mentorship felt deeply rewarding. Laura realized that her growth wasn't just personal, it was a ripple effect, lifting others alongside her. At the same time, Laura was growing in confidence with leadership responsibilities. She led strategy sessions, influenced decision-making, and built bridges between clients and her team. Her voice carried weight, not because she demanded it, but because she earned respect through integrity and results. This growth also shifted Laura's relationship with work. It was no longer a source of stress or sacrifice but a place of fulfillment and purpose. She began setting healthier boundaries, refusing to let work consume her life as it once had. She prioritized balance, ensuring time for family and self-care. Laura's renewed sense of self extended beyond the office. She felt more present with her daughter, more patient with her mother, and more connected to her own needs and desires. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Occasionally, doubts crept in, old fears of not being enough, of being overlooked. But Laura met those moments with kindness toward herself, reminding herself of the courage it took to leave a toxic environment and the strength she now possessed. As her new company flourished with the integration of key clients, Laura's role expanded. She was asked to lead onboarding for new clients, manage complex projects, and contribute to company-wide initiatives. With every success, her confidence grew, reinforcing that she belonged at the table. Her story began inspiring others both inside and outside the company. A LinkedIn post reflecting on her journey sparked conversations about employee value, leadership, and the courage to demand fair treatment. Colleagues and strangers alike reached out, sharing their own struggles and victories. Laura understood that growth was ongoing, not a destination but a continuous journey. She remained committed to learning, listening, and leading with empathy. Through this growth, Laura reclaimed her narrative, no longer the overlooked employee. She was now a respected leader, mentor, and advocate for change. Her experience taught her that true success isn't just personal achievement but lifting others as you rise. And in that, Laura found her greatest fulfillment. Standing in front of the leadership roundtable, Laura felt a rush of emotions, pride, vulnerability, and a deep sense of purpose. The room was filled with senior executives and department heads, people who had the power to shape company culture and policies. For a moment, she remembered the years she had spent feeling invisible, the smirk from her former manager when she dared to ask for what she deserved, and the silent struggle behind every late night and missed family event. Taking a deep breath, Laura began to speak, not about bitterness or resentment, but about truth. She told them about her decade of loyalty, the quiet resilience that had kept her going, and the moment she realized that loyalty alone wasn't enough. She spoke about the pain of being undervalued, overlooked, and dismissed, and the courage it took to finally walk away. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shone with raw honesty. She shared how leaving wasn't an act of failure, but one of self-respect. How stepping into a place where she was truly valued had transformed not just her career, but her life. The room was silent, the weight of her words settled deeply. Then she spoke about the freedom that came with that decision, the clarity, the empowerment, and the quiet strength that followed. She emphasized that companies must recognize the human side of their workforce, not just the numbers on a spreadsheet. After her talk, a senior executive approached her with a look of sincere admiration. "I wish someone like you had been here 5 years ago," he said. "We lost too many Laurens." That comment lingered with Laura long after the meeting ended. It was a reminder of the systemic failures she had faced, but also of the opportunity for change. She knew that her story was now part of a larger conversation about valuing experienced professionals and fostering environments where loyalty was met with respect. At home that evening, Laura's daughter hugged her tightly. "Mom, I'm so proud of you," she said. For the first time in a long while, Laura felt a deep sense of peace, not just from professional success, but from knowing she had modeled strength and courage for her family. Laura's journey had become more than just a personal victory. It was a beacon for others stuck in similar situations, those who felt invisible, unappreciated, or afraid to speak up. Her LinkedIn post about silent observation turning into action sparked conversations worldwide. Messages poured in from people who found hope and permission in her story to demand more from their own careers. Meanwhile, her former company grappled with the fallout of her departure. Policies were re-examined, and leadership began to acknowledge the need for change. Laura's former manager was quietly reassigned, a subtle but telling consequence of the culture that had pushed her away. But Laura wasn't focused on retribution. Instead, she channeled her energy into building something lasting, leading her team with empathy, mentoring others, and advocating for fair treatment and recognition. She created onboarding processes that valued each new employee's potential and built a culture of transparency and respect. Each morning, as she walked into her bright, sunlit office, Laura felt a calm satisfaction. It wasn't about money or titles, it was about being seen, heard, and valued for who she was. She had rewritten her story from one of silent endurance to one of empowered leadership. And in doing so, she had sparked a ripple effect, one that would inspire others to recognize their worth and walk confidently toward their own new opportunities. Laura's story was a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and self-respect. It reminded everyone that sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in staying silent but in standing up, speaking out, and walking away when your value isn't recognized. Her journey wasn't just about leaving a job, it was about reclaiming dignity, inspiring change, and lighting the way for others who deserve to shine. Laura's story teaches us that loyalty alone is not a currency that guarantees respect or fair treatment. True value comes from recognizing your own worth and having the courage to demand it. When loyalty is met with disregard, staying silent or settling only diminishes your potential and self-respect. Walking away is not failure, it is growth. It is an act of self-love and empowerment that opens doors to opportunities where you will be valued for both your skills and who you are. Sometimes, the hardest but most necessary step is choosing yourself over comfort or fear. If you find yourself in a situation where your dedication is taken for granted or your efforts overlooked, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, are you being fairly compensated and respected? Are you growing, or just surviving? Consider quietly exploring new opportunities or having honest conversations about your value. Build your network, update your skills, and don't be afraid to take the leap when the right chance comes. Remember, walking away is not burning bridges, it's building new ones. By choosing environments that honor your worth, you set an example for others and pave the way for meaningful career growth and personal fulfillment. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.